Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you all had a wonderful week. If you caught the first episode, we dove into the origin of U3 and how it all started briefly. Today, we're switching the gears a bit to talk about leadership and growth, not just in esports, but what it really takes to guide a team and keep moving forward. Whether you are a player, a coach, or just curious about what it's like behind the scenes, this episode is for you. We're keeping it real, sharing the wins, challenges, and lessons learned along the way. I'm going to kick it off with some personal stories and experiences of my own. I'm going to start off with how I stepped into a leadership role, not just in U3, but just overall. And that's that origin story that I was talking about. That it's gonna, we're gonna be sitting here for a while, but I'm gonna keep it brief. I started off with a gaming community called For the Culture Clan, short for FTCC, and it really was just me, my friends, and family, and we were just casually playing games. And at the time, COD Mobile was a hit, and we were streaming, and people were like coming into our server, and we just really built the community really fast. And someone had informed us about playing competitively, and we didn't even know that was a thing at the time. At least I didn't. And so we built a team and we started grinding. I started learning the ins and the outs, like, how serious people take things, building my own training routine, practice times. Like, we went in. I honestly feel like if we kept grinding, we would have made it to the COD Mobile Championship for sure. But I had a family member who was into Rocket League, and I had never heard about Rocket League. And he was telling me about it, and he wanted to build, additional community within the community we already had, but like he just wanted to branch out and add Rocket League players to the community too, and not just first person shooter players or people who just play shooting games. He wanted us to branch out some more and grow some more. So I was like, yeah, sure, that's your thing. I support you or whatever. But before we do all that, let me see you play. And I tried playing. Oh, if y'all seen me when I very, very first played, y'all would have been like, girl, what are you doing? Baby, I didn't know. I didn't know what I was doing, but it was funny. I just knew, okay, this ain't the game for me. Or at least at the time, I didn't take the time to actually learn the game. I just wanted to leave him or let him be, or let that be his lane. Let me say it that way. Because COD Mobile was my lane. I was like, well, let me just let him have this lane. And so that's what I did. And then, some things shifted, and I just felt bad, or I felt a little guilt on just leaving the players hanging. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to just step away from playing competitively in COD Mobile, and I'm going to manage this team. Let me figure out what they need, what's happening in the Rocket League streets. What are people looking for right now? How does this work? And so the players, they understood because, as like I stated before, everybody's just looking to grow, looking to compete, looking to belong. And that's really what FTCC was about. It was a place where you truly could belong. Like, nobody was there to judge you, no matter what walk of life you came from. You was there to be yourself. And so we, that's when they, informed me, like, a lot of people are starting to play in leagues now. And I was like, okay, well, what's a league? And they started explaining to me, and I was like, okay, I think I might have ran into somebody who actually has a league or trying to, start up a league. And I was like, maybe we should, join them and support them or whatnot. And that did not go well. And so I had a player who was like, hey, we should start our own league. And I was like, okay. Well, since you know a lot about it, you think you can, you know, get it going, get the ship moving, then cool. I support you. You know, I'll be your right hand. And so that's what happened. We kicked off a league. It was a success. We had over 400 plus members in the server. We had 22 teams, and we made it to 6 seasons before I had to decide to cut my ways. But before I cut my ways, I began researching and just finding out what was needed to just start a semi-professional team. And there's not many resources out there. Like, you just find a lot of like interviews of like people just quickly discussing, being a part of a team or how they began. But it's really not like as I stated in the last episode, like, there's really no blueprints. Like, it's really just free will. Like, you create your path that you want to take, and you just hope it works. And so with that comes a lot of trial and error. And it's just about, do you have the time for many test cases? Like, do you have time to do thorough testing before you create a product that is valuable and that creates a return on investment? So yeah, as I was saying, I started researching, and I began to develop what I needed. And so when I parted ways, I still had something to fall on, because at that point I had already became a LLC. I just had already invested too much, and I don't think anyone understood that. I don't think anyone understood how invested I was. It was just like, I'm invested deeply where I can't just wake up one morning and walk away. I will lose a lot. In other words, I have a lot to lose if I wake up one morning and I just walk away like that. I walked away from a league, and that cost me a lot. But I made sure I had something to fall on, and that was the semi-pro team. And that's how we're here today. And it hasn't, been rainbows, or, as people like to say, green on the other side, but it's green and it's flowing, and we finding our way, because like I said, there is no blueprint. I've ran into a lot of great players, and there's nothing bad that I can say about anyone, because as I mentioned before, everybody comes from different walks of life, and I'm understanding in that way. And when it comes to the talent of players, or talented players that I've had, I just always be amazed. I'm just always speechless, because I sit and I think, I'd be like, man, I've had a decent amount of players walk through my door and walk out. And people may think, oh, they're walking out because you don't know what the hell you're doing. That might be true. But I also know what is true too is that people will move on to the next best thing. Especially if there's no consequence to the decision that they have to make. There's no consequence when a person decides to breach or terminate their contract. It's not like they're paying me a fee. It's not like they have to go to court. They terminate their contract to go on to the next best thing. They don't have anything to lose. They don't have to wake up thinking about how to make the business profitable, how to make the winning team, how to get members you bring it in, how to build that team synergy, or how to build chemistry, how to manage conflicts and dispute conflicts, and they don't have to think about none of that. I need them. My business needs players. And I know every day I wake up, it's a risk that somebody's going to walk out the door. That's the risk that I'm taking when I chose to be in this game, when I chose to be in this lane, the lane that I picked. But I'm also determined, and I'm not one who quits. Everything that I have done or gained through success has been because I'm not one who sits around and wait for somebody to provide me a solution or solve my problems. I get out there and I figure it out. I've always been that way, and that's how I am with this semi-pro team. And that's the challenges that I face. I just went into the next bullet point. Sorry, y'all. Y'all didn't even know. But I just basically talked about challenges that I face, like managing personalities, maintaining morale, or making tough decisions. And I hope you also heard like my moments of growth, how failure can teach you a key lesson. And most of the failures that has happened has been teaching me just about communication or delegation, honestly. I do find that a lot of players, they have an idea of what professionalism is, but they're not actively doing it on a daily basis. I have a lot of players who don't understand how serious this is and how much time and commitment is needed or required. So I tend to get a lot of players who leave because of the time and commitment. They simply just thought, oh, I'm just be on a team and we just it's just gonna be it. No, you gotta work, you gotta grind. It really takes blood, sweat, and tears. So a lot of people just think it's casual. They don't think about it from a competitive aspect. Like, yeah, they hear the word, but they don't know what the word means. They don't have a definition for themselves. But my players also enjoy my leadership. I personally believe that I have impacted a lot of players who have came through my door in a positive way. And I think a lot of them were appreciative of what I had in that moment that they, crossed paths with me. And recently I got to hear it. It was in the middle of a coaching session, and I had a player who decided to be vulnerable. And he spoke in front of the coach and spoke in front of his teammates, and he said, hey, I don't know where I would be without YJ. I don't know where I would be if she hadn't taken a chance with me, or if she hasn't given me a chance. I don't think I would see the improvement that I have seen today. And with that player, he was in my league as well. He's also now on my semi-pro team, but I met him through the past league or former league that I had, and he was a low-skilled player, And people just didn't have patience because, with the league, there's people from all different skill levels, all different experiences. They all have their idea of how they think, the game should go and how you should play the game and what mechanics you should have at what level. And so, it's just a lot, right? And so people were very impatient. They weren't allowing him to get enough play time. He was always stuck as a sub. And so at some point, I became a manager for a team, and I made it a mission to make sure that he was on my team and that he felt seen and that he knew that if you keep at it and you ignore the noise, you can achieve the goals that you have for yourself. And I just kept reminding him, and I stayed in the voice chat and I listened. And, that's one thing about me. I'm a great listener. And I'm very intentional about the things that I do and the things that I say. And, I think that one-on-one time is very needed because it allows you to build a bond. It allows you to build a connection. It allows for players to realize that they can trust you and that, you have their best interest at heart. And I genuinely feel like he felt that. And it carried on beyond the league. And when I left, I made sure I let him know, hey, when I get things rolling, I want you to try out when you are ready. And he did. And I made sure I had a spot for him on my team. And he got a spot and he's here. And he's making great improvements. He's now GC in twos. And I'm just so proud of him. Just very proud. Just very proud. But I almost cried when he spoke and said all the things that he said in the call that night. If I can get him to record the things that he said, I will try to play them in this episode. But if not in this episode, I will play it in the next episode. Just so y'all can know that I'm telling the truth and keeping it real. But that's just a player's perspective on like how my leadership has impacted them, or a moment they appreciated my guidance. And I hope you guys learned a little bit more about me as a owner and ways that, how I approach things. And just let me know if you would handle things a little bit different, or if you've been in situations that I've been in, or the things that I mentioned, like if you've been in those before, and how did you decide to, or I should say, what route did you decide to take to help you move forward. But I'm just going to go over like some key takeaways for this, like key lessons and takeaways. Leadership is about service, not control. Growth happens in discomfort for leaders and for team members. Communication is everything. Clarity and empathy matter. Mistakes are certain to happen. Learning from them is non-negotiable. Whether you're leading a team in Rocket League or navigating group projects at work, these lessons still apply. Leadership and growth aren't a one-time achievement. They are a daily practice. So here I am again, inviting you in. Think about a time you were in a leadership position or had to guide someone. What worked? What didn't? How did you grow from that experience? And if you're wondering, how in the world was we supposed to tell you that? DM me on Discord at YJ The Truth, or you can email me at unleashedesports@tuta.com, or drop a comment on this Spotify episode or on YouTube. Once again, I love to share some of those on future episodes. Thanks for tuning in to episode 2 of Unleashed Stories. Leadership and growth are ongoing journeys, both in esports and in life. Remember, mistakes aren't failures if you learn from them, and leadership is all about helping others rise. Next episode, we're shifting to another topic: the business of esports. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a teammate, a friend, or anyone who's trying to level up in life. And as always, play with purpose, unleash the future.